it'd be good to review a film that's genuinely underrated. I've seen it so many times now, and each time I just think this really should be seen by a lot more people. And maybe it is, but it's just one of those sort of films you just don't hear much about for some reason. It didn't get great reviews. It's a film called The Cottage, which is a 2008 film starring Reece Shearsmith, Andy Serkis, Stephen O'Donnell, and Jennifer Aniston. I think it's up there in terms of dark comedy. It's even up there with stuff like In Bruges, which is sort of, one of the best dark comedies you could ever wish for. In Bruges, just one of my favourites. Such a good film. And this is kind of along similar lines. It's got that sort of dark, edgy humour that is genuinely funny, not trying too hard. That Andy Serkis and Reece Shearsmith play two brothers who kidnap Jennifer Aniston, who is the daughter of a notorious sort of gang lord, in order to try and get money. Needless to say, it does go pretty wrong. It's not really a spoiler, but halfway through the film it turns into quite something else, and the money's pretty much forgotten about because it just goes crazy. First, I think Andy Serkis is hilarious in it. Hilariously angry, quite a brooding sort of character, and angry for good reason. He's a frustrated man, but you do understand why. And he's almost like a psychotically violent Basil Fawlty, I guess. Reece Shearsmith in it, he's quite a cowardly character. Again, he's lovable though, and he does redeem himself in certain points, and he is quite relatable in the certain situation he finds himself in, particularly halfway through the film. He also screams amazingly well. Like, it's quite incredible how much he screams in this film and how well he pulls it off. Brilliant comic actor. Stephen O'Donnell as well is brilliant in it. You might know him a bit better as Spud Gunn from the TV series Bottom. Each of the characters is just a really well written script. Everything's paced along perfectly, and it does everything a comedy horror needs to do. It balances both the genres really well. It shares some comparisons with Shaun of the Dead, I suppose, in that there are moments that are genuinely unsettling in the film, which Shaun of the Dead did well as well. There's particular points in Shaun of the Dead that are quite genuinely unsettling and scary and upsetting. And in The Cottage, you do genuinely care for the two brothers in particular, played by Reece and Andy Serkis. And so it leads up to quite an emotional, funny ending, but an emotional one at the same time. And that's the comparison with Shaun of the Dead, really, is that they both do have genuinely unsettling moments, which a lot of comedy horrors don't tend to have. They tend to focus too much on the comedy. They end up being not that funny anyway, and losing the scares. So, but not in the case of Shaun of the Dead's like a classic in its own right, I think, because it has genuine scares and brilliant comedy. And The Cottage, isn't far off either. I think The Cottage is genuinely funny and has occasional disturbing moments. Another comparison I think to make when I was watching it again recently is that it shares a certain style to From Dusk Till Dawn, in the way that the film is almost two films in one. Because in From Dusk Till Dawn, you spend the first half with the Gecko brothers, played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. It's just a crime thriller for the first sort of half of From Dusk Till Dawn. And then halfway through, it just turns into a full-on horror. Like, it's just such a sudden tonal shift. It's a great film, From Dusk Till Dawn, actually. And The Cottage is very similar. The first half of this is a bit of a crime suspense comedy, I suppose you could call it. And then halfway through it just turns into something completely different. It's just a proper gore fest as well, so anyone who's into proper gory films, you'll love this one. Other comparisons, the last half of the film also has a lot to owe. Owes a great debt to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The writer-director was quite inspired, clearly influenced by Tobe Hooper and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, original at least. It's a typically English film in that there's a lot of cups of tea being made, and it's out in the English countryside. And so I think for British people in particular, or English people, whichever way you want to put it, it's going to strike a chord, and it's going to be quite realistic. It's dark comedy at its best. It's really foul-mouthed, like some of the dialogue the characters say, particularly Jennifer Ellison, is just really foul and just hilarious. It's a great film to watch around Halloween. It's got comedy, it's got laughs, it's got a little bit of emotion towards the end, a little bit. It's got genuine disturbing material here and there. Fair few jump scares, particularly for comic effect. I think it's a genuinely underrated film. I really recommend seeing The Cottage. It's brilliant. All the performances are just stunning. Really funny, well written, well directed. Camera movements, if you're into your technical stuff, are just some of them played for comic effect again, and that's really. I haven't said much about the story of this because it's best to watch without really knowing a lot about it. But yeah, go and see it. And if you need more reason to see it, it's also got a pretty good cameo from Doug Bradley, who of course played Pinhead in the Hellraiser series.